I grew up in Willow Creek, Massachusetts, where lawns were perfectly manicured, and success was measured by university banners and golf club memberships. My mother, Margaret Hensley, had once been a lifestyle columnist, a woman capable of shaping or shattering reputations with a single sentence. She carried herself as if perpetually on a deadline, inspecting every room for flaws, especially if those flaws were me. My sister Abigail embodied everything my mother had ever wanted in a daughter. She graduated from Harvard Law, clerked for a circuit judge, and was on track to make partner before turning 30 at every holiday dinner. There was a new headline about her, sometimes literally. As mother clipped articles and framed them on the dining room wall, I was an afterthought, seated at the table's far end beside younger cousins, answering questions about school even after I had dropped out. When I mentioned building websites for small businesses, someone would chuckle and call it quaint, as if I were selling lemonade on the sidewalk. Abigail would offer me a patient smile, the kind reserved for someone expected to outgrow their foolish phase. From the age of 12, I knew I didn't want the life they promoted. I prefer dismantling old computers to dressing for networking brunches. I love the riddle of code, the thrill of seeing something I had built work for the first time. My mother called it tinkering. My father, less subtle, asked if I planned to fiddle with gadgets until I was 40. By my early 20s, the divide between us had grown into a chasm. They valued degrees and titles. I valued ideas and the freedom to pursue them. Still, I tried to remain civil, fit into their world without disappearing into it. That illusion shattered one Sunday evening at a dinner I will never forget, when the distance between us became undeniable. The table was set with Margaret's finest china, reserved for guests. Crystal glasses gleamed under the chandelier, and the air carried the faint aroma of her signature roast chicken. Relatives filled every seat, conversations buzzing about promotions, Ivy League acceptances, and Abigail's latest courtroom triumph. I had been silent all evening, waiting for my moment. When dessert was served, I set down my fork and said, "I'm not returning to Dartmouth next semester. I'm focusing full-time on my business. I have paying clients and a plan to expand." The clink of silverware stopped. For a moment, no one moved. Then Margaret leaned back, eyes narrowing. "Your business," she repeated, tasting the words like something bitter. "Is that what you call those little websites you toy with?" "They're not little," I said. "They generate revenue." Her hand slammed the table. "Get out, you failure." The words cut through the room like shattered glass. A cousin coughed into his napkin. Abigail's lips curled into a knowing smirk. Heat crept up my neck, but I kept my voice steady. "If that's how you see me, then I will." I stood, my chair scraping the polished floor. No one stopped me. No one asked for an explanation. Upstairs, I packed quickly, lapped up a few clothes, my worn leather backpack. Each item felt like a piece of the life I had quietly been building behind their backs. When I came downstairs, Margaret didn't look up from pouring coffee. My father muttered to a guest, treating the scene as a minor inconvenience. I walked out into the cool night, closing the door softly, knowing I had never crossed that threshold the same way again. The street was quiet, the only sound the faint hum of my resolve. As I headed to the train station, bound for whatever came next, the apartment was barely 400 square feet. Tucked above a deli that stayed open until 3 a.m., pipes groaned whenever a neighbor used the tap, and the radiator clanked in protest. My furniture came from yard sales and curbs on trash night. A chipped desk, wedged between the kitchenette and the window, became my command center. From that cramped space, I launched my idea, an online marketplace for boutique artisans to sell their work without being overshadowed by giant e-commerce platforms. Potters in small towns, jewelers at kitchen tables, painters without gallery connections. I wanted their craft to shine, not be lost in mass-produced clutter. I built the site myself, coding late into the night, refining layouts and payment systems until my eyes stung. I emailed shop owners, pitching the platform online. Most didn't reply. A few did, but their first question was always, "Where did you study?" When I admitted I had no degree, their tone shifted. Some stopped responding. Others offered polite rejections. Rent and utilities drained my meager savings. I skipped breakfast, living on instant noodles and canned beans. I took odd tech repair jobs fixing a neighbor's glitchy phone, untangling a stubborn printer to cover web hosting costs. One night, after sending out proposals, I checked my inbox. Another rejection, this one from a boutique in Maine. The owner's last line read, "Come back when you have real credentials." I closed my laptop, leaned back, and stared at the water-stained ceiling. The city noise faded to a dull hum. For the first time since leaving home, I wondered if my mother had been right. Without a degree, I'd always be a step behind. But morning came, bringing another chance to prove otherwise. The next day, I packed my laptop and headed to a free small business meet posted on a community board, hoping to find at least one person willing to listen. The seminar was held in a public library's back room, folding chairs arranged unevenly. About 20 people attended, most in business casual, some in paint-splattered work shirts. I sat near the back, notebook open, blending in. The speaker, Laura Bennett, had founded a small but thriving logistics software company. She wasn't polished, sleeves rolled up, speaking plainly with the authority of someone who had survived multiple failed ventures. She discussed supply chains, inventory tracking, and inefficiencies that drain small businesses. After the talk, most attendees left quickly, but I lingered, summoning the courage to approach her. When I did, I nearly dropped my homemade business card. "I run a marketplace for artisans," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "No degree, no investors, but real clients and sales when I can get them." Laura studied me, then asked, "Do you have customer data?" I opened my laptop, showing my small but growing list of sellers and their order histories. She scrolled through my spreadsheets, expression unreadable, then leaned back. "You're thinking too small. Selling one handmade scarf at a time is slow. What if you sold your order system to 50 shops at once? Give them tools, not just a storefront." Her words clicked like a blueprint, snapping into place. I had been so focused on individual sellers, I hadn't considered turning my platform into software for retail networks. We talked until the library staff stacked chairs. As I walked into the cold night, my mind was rewriting every strategy and scope. By the time I reached my apartment, I knew the marketplace was over. The real business was beginning. The pivot wasn't easy. I stripped my old marketplace to its core and rebuilt it as a cloud-based inventory and order management system for artisan retailers. I spent weeks learning new frameworks, designing a cleaner dashboard, and integrating shipping APIs so store owners could track products from workshop to showroom. Days bled into nights. My cold call spreadsheet grew to over 200 names, boutique chains, regional cooperatives, specialty furniture stores. Most ended in polite rejections or silence. But one morning, an email arrived from the operations director of Maple and Stone, a New England-based artisan furniture chain with 14 locations. They wanted a new system and requested a demo. I barely slept that week. By Friday, I had a live demo loaded with their product categories, sample sales reports, and automated reorder alerts. The call lasted 45 minutes, but when it ended, the director said, "We've been searching for something like this for years. Send the proposal." The contract was $500,000, half upfront. When I saw the signed agreement, I stared, hands still on the keyboard, as if moving might make it vanish. Then came the real work. For 2 months, I pushed harder than ever, coordinating remotely with their managers, customizing features for each location, triple-checking integrations. I ate at my desk, worked through weekends, and sometimes fell asleep with code open on the screen. The rollout went live on schedule. No crashes, no data losses. Within weeks, their regional managers reported faster turnarounds and cleaner inventory counts. Maple and Stone's owner sent a handwritten thank you card, a small gesture. But it felt like validation in ink. Soon after, they referred me to 2 other high-end retailers. Those introductions became meetings, then new contracts. Revenue far exceeded anything I had imagined from my cramped apartment building websites for single sellers. I couldn't do it alone anymore. I hired 2 developers and a project coordinator, people as precise and driven as I was. For the first time, I had a team. And together, we were building something that could outgrow every limit I had once imagined. Contracts kept coming. And so did the money. What had been a few thousand a year became more than I had ever dreamed possible. Yet I kept my lifestyle simple. I stayed in the same modest apartment, wore the same worn boots to client meetings, drove a car with too many miles to count. The less my family suspected, the better. It wasn't about fear, it was about control. I didn't want my success twisted into something ugly. So when I decided to help them, I ensured it was untraceable. I learned from a town that my parents were months behind on their mortgage. Within a week, an anonymous community foundation began covering their payments. They received a letter from the bank praising their contributions to local education as the reason. My father told neighbors a benefactor had recognized his years of service. My mother called it divine timing. When Margaret's thyroid condition worsened and insurance wouldn't cover certain treatments, a private health trust appeared to pay for them in full. She never questioned it, only expressed gratitude for the kindness of strangers. Abigail's children were next. She enrolled them in an elite private school but hesitated at the tuition bill. That fall, both received academic enrichment grants from a regional foundation covering their fees. She posted online about feeling blessed by people who valued education. Through it all, they still treated me as the dropout who had chosen the wrong path. At holiday dinners, they compared me unfavorably to Abigail, hinting I should finish my degree. I smiled, nodded, and stayed silent. Every time they praised their mysterious benefactors, I kept my eyes down, hiding the truth in plain sight. I told myself it was enough to know I was helping, even if they never thanked me. That illusion didn't last. One holiday, it broke. The table was set, as always, silver polished, wine glasses aligned, Margaret's roast turkey at the center. I had been invited, likely out of obligation. This time I brought a folder thick with documents, bank transfer records, trust agreements, company valuations, everything they had never asked about. Dinner began as usual, Margaret's toast to family. My father's speech praising Abigail's accomplishments, the children's test scores, and how blessed they were to have such shining examples. My name wasn't mentioned. When the turkey was carved and plates passed, I placed the folder between the cranberry sauce and rolls. "It's time you know the truth," I said. My father frowned as I slid the first document toward them, a valuation report, placing my company's worth at $48 million. Next came statements showing mortgage payments from the so-called community foundation, health bills paid by a private trust, and tuition grants for Abigail's children. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Where did you get these?" "They're mine," I said evenly. "The foundation, the trust, the grants, they've all been me for years." Abigail let out a short laugh. "So you mess around with code and suddenly you're a millionaire." "I built a company that serves clients nationwide," I replied, voice steady. "I've been supporting you all quietly because I didn't want gratitude." "Just respect." "You're lying," Margaret snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut the room. I stood, tucking the documents back into the folder. "If you think I'm lying, you won't miss the help. As of today, it's over." No one moved as I took my coat from the chair. I walked out into the cold night, their muffled voices fading with each step. By the next morning, I'd booked movers. My new address would be high above the streets of Boston. Far from that table and everything it represented, the movers arrived at dawn, their footsteps echoing through my nearly empty apartment. By mid-morning, the last box was sealed and I was on my way to Boston. The Penthouse keys felt heavy in my hand knot from their weight. But from what they symbolized, years of quiet work swallowed pride. And building something they said I couldn't. Stepping inside, the space opened like a horizon. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped the living room, the skyline sprawling in every direction. The Charles River shimmered in the distance, a ribbon of light cutting through the city. White oak floors caught the winter sun, and the bare walls waited for me to decide what belonged. That first night, I stood barefoot by the glass. the city lights below flickering like a constellation I could finally call my own. I'd signed the closing papers months ago, but until now it had just been a property. Today it became home. Within a week, my company's new headquarters opened on the top floor of a glass tower in downtown Boston. The office was sleek, bright, and built for collaboration, with conference rooms named after the small towns of my earliest clients. My name was on the doorknob, hidden in an LLC or buried under a shell company. That month, I attended my first industry gala, shaking hands with executives, founders, and investors who knew my work by reputation. No one asked about my education or measured my worth by a degree. They measured it by what I had built. And that was enough. Boston had always been the backdrop of someone else's story in my family's eyes. Now it was the setting for mine, and I intended to write every chapter without their permission. Success felt different when it wasn't just mine to hold. In the spring, I launched the Hensley Catalyst Fund, a grant and mentorship program for entrepreneurs like me who built without a degree stamp. I wanted to find those working quietly in borrowed spaces, holding their ideas together with determination and borrowed Wi-Fi. The first grant went to a 22-year-old named Sophia Carter, who was developing a scheduling and patient tracking app for rural clinics. She'd been juggling part-time jobs to keep it alive, coding at night on a secondhand laptop that overheated hourly. The grant covered her living expenses, new equipment, and connected her with mentors to bring the app to market when the announcement went public. It gained more attention than I expected. Industry blogs, business journals, even a national magazine feature. Headlines called me a champion for non-traditional founders, proof that the unconventional path could lead to the top. It wasn't about the praise. It was about the shift. Emails poured in from across the country, each a reminder that there were more of us than anyone admitted. The fund wasn't just giving money, it was giving permission. And something I'd learned was harder to find than capital. One night, standing on my penthouse balcony, I thought of Sophia, the other applicants waiting for their chance, and the younger version of myself who needed someone to believe she wasn't wasting her time. Then the call came, reopening a door I thought I'd closed. 2 weeks after the fund's launch, my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in months. Margaret's voice was softer than I remembered. "I'd like to see you," she said, "just to talk." We met at a small cafe tucked between brownstones where the noise stayed a murmur. She arrived in a simple coat, no grand entrance, no sharp glance. We sipped coffee in silence for a while. "I was wrong," she said finally, "about what matters. About you." I didn't rush to fill the silence. "I can't change how things were," she added, "but I'd like to know you as you are now." I set my cup down. "Then it starts with respect. No comparisons, no conditions." She nodded, and for once there was no edge. We parted without promises, but also without the weight of old resentments. That weekend, I hosted a dinner on my rooftop. String lights swayed in the evening breeze, the city humming below. My team laughed around the long table, and the first grant recipients shared project updates. Plates passed, glasses clinked, stories overlapped. As I looked around, I realized this was my family chosen, not inherited. In that moment, I knew I had stopped living to earn a place at someone else's table. I had built my own. I learned that true success lies in defining one's own worth, independent of others' expectations, through rejection and doubt. I discovered that my value isn't tied to degrees or traditional markers, but to my ability to create, persevere, and impact others. Building my company and helping my family anonymously taught me the power of quiet resilience and self-belief. By confronting my family's dismissal and later forgiving my mother, I realized that respect earned through my achievements and extended to others frees me to build a life and legacy on my own terms, surrounded by a chosen family who values my vision.